The diplomatic station floated silently in the darkness of space, orbiting the planet Proxima Tertius like a metal ring of hope. Inside its cold corridors, Princess Lyra stood before the tall windows of her temporary quarters, watching the stars with a heavy heart. Her feathers, which covered parts of her arms and the edges of her face in beautiful patterns of silver and blue, trembled slightly. She wrapped her wings tighter around her body, a gesture her people made when they felt afraid or uncertain. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow she would meet the human she was supposed to marry. Lyra had heard stories about humans all her life. The Valkyrie people whispered about them in fearful voices, telling tales of their strength and their violence. Humans were shorter than her people, but they were dense with muscle. They came from a world with crushing gravity, and their bodies were built to endure pain that would kill most other species. In the war that had raged for 5 years, human soldiers had fought with a determination that terrified the Valkyrie generals. They never gave up, never retreated when cornered. They just fought harder. And now, to stop the war, Lyra was being given to one of them. Her sister Kira entered the room quietly, her own wings drooping with sadness. Kira was younger by 3 years, with brighter feathers and a hopeful spirit that Lyra had always envied. But today even Kira looked defeated. "You don't have to do this," Kira whispered, taking Lyra's hand. "We could run away. I could help you." Lyra shook her head slowly. "If I run, the war continues. More people die. Both our people and the humans. This marriage is supposed to create peace, but you'll be alone with them. With him? What if the stories are true? What if he hurts you?" Lyra had asked herself the same question 1,000 times. The human commander she was supposed to marry was named Jake Morrison. She had seen only one picture of him, a military portrait that showed a man with dark hair, strong features and eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. He wore his uniform with perfect precision, and medals decorated his chest. A warrior, a killer, and soon her husband. "I don't have a choice," Lyra said softly. "Father made the agreement. The council approved it. This is my duty." Kira hugged her tightly and Lyra felt tears sting her eyes. She had never been brave like the warriors of her people. She had spent her life in the palace, learning music and art, studying the old poems and practicing the traditional dances. She was not prepared for this. She was not prepared to leave everything she knew and live among humans who might see her as nothing more than a trophy of war. The next morning came too quickly. Lyra dressed in the formal robes of her house, layers of shimmering fabric that caught the light as she moved. Her attendant styled her head feathers in the traditional way for a bride, weaving them with silver threads and small crystals. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the frightened woman staring back. The ceremony room was filled with representatives from both species. On one side stood the Valkyrie diplomats in their elegant robes, their wings held high in formal posture. On the other side stood the humans in their dark military uniforms, looking stiff and uncomfortable. The two groups eyed each other with barely hidden distrust. Then the door opened and Jake Morrison walked in. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. He was exactly as intimidating as she had feared. He moved with the controlled grace of a predator, each step deliberate and sure. His uniform was perfectly pressed, and his posture showed the discipline of years in the military. But what frightened Lyra most were his eyes. They swept across the room, taking in every detail, assessing every person. When those eyes found her, Lyra felt her wings involuntarily press closer to her body. Jake approached the center of the room where she stood. He was shorter than her by several inches, as all humans were shorter than the Valkyrie, but somehow he still seemed to fill the space around him. He stopped at the appropriate distance, respecting the formal boundary that Valkyrie custom required. "Princess Lyra," he said, and his voice was deeper than she expected, but not unkind. "I am Commander Jake Morrison. It is an honor to meet you." Lyra managed a small bow, her voice barely above a whisper. "Commander," she could not bring herself to say more. Her heart was beating so fast that she thought surely everyone in the room could hear it. Jake's expression remained neutral, professional, but she thought she saw something flicker in his eyes. Was it disappointment? Anger that she was clearly afraid of him? She could not tell. The ceremony began. A human official and a Valkyrie elder took turns reading from the treaty documents, explaining in dry, formal language how this marriage would serve as a bond between their two peoples. They spoke of peace and cooperation, of cultural exchange and mutual respect, but all Lyra could think about was that soon she would belong to this human, would have to live on his ship, would have to share quarters with him and submit to whatever he demanded of her. When it came time to sign the documents, Lyra's hand shook so badly that she nearly dropped the stylus. Jake signed with steady, confident strokes. Of course he was calm. He was getting a wife delivered to him, a prize from a defeated enemy. What did he have to fear? After the signing, there was a formal meal. Lyra sat beside Jake at the head table, very aware of how close he was. She could hear him breathing, could sense the heat coming from his body. Humans ran hot compared to her people. Another adaptation from their harsh world. She picked at her food, unable to eat, while Jake spoke politely with the diplomats around them. Once he turned to her and asked quietly, "Are you feeling all right, Princess? You haven't eaten much." The consideration in his tone surprised her, but she still could not meet his eyes. "I am fine, Commander." "Please call me Jake." "I cannot. It would not be proper." He nodded, accepting this without argument, and returned to his conversation with the others. Lyra felt a small measure of relief that he had not pushed the issue. Perhaps he would be the kind of master who was strict about formality. She could handle that. She had been trained in court etiquette her entire life. The meal ended and Lyra was given one final hour with her family. Her father, the king, spoke to her briefly about duty and honor, but his words felt hollow. He was sending his daughter away to live with aliens, and he could barely look at her while doing it. Her mother was already gone, had died years ago, so there was no maternal comfort to be found. Only Kira truly said goodbye. They held each other in Lyra's quarters, neither wanting to let go. "I will miss you every day," Kira whispered. "Write to me. Promise you'll write and tell me you're safe." "I promise," Lyra said, though she was not sure she could keep it. What if Jake did not allow her to communicate with her family? What if he isolated her completely? Too soon it was time to leave. Lyra gathered her few personal belongings, items she was permitted to bring to her new life. A box of memory crystals containing pictures and recordings of her family. Her mother's necklace. A book of ancient Velkari poetry. A small statue of the goddess her people prayed to for protection. She held these items close as she walked through the station toward the docking bay, where the human ship waited. The Starbound was larger than she expected, a massive vessel designed for both military operations and long-term space travel. Its hull was dark gray and covered in the angular panels and weapon arrays that marked it as a warship. Lyra's stomach twisted as she looked at it. This was going to be her home now. This machine of war. Jake was waiting at the airlock with several of his officers. When Lyra approached with her Velkari escort, he stepped forward. "Welcome aboard the Starbound, Princess," he said formally. Then to her surprise, he gestured to one of his officers, a woman with kind eyes and brown hair pulled back in a neat bun. "This is Lieutenant Sophie Grant, my second in command. She'll help you get settled and will be available if you need anything." Sophie smiled at Lyra, a genuine expression that seemed free of malice. "It's nice to meet you, Princess. We've prepared quarters for you. I hope you'll be comfortable." Comfortable? What a strange word for a prison. But Lyra nodded politely and followed as they led her into the ship. The corridors were narrower than she was used to, designed for the smaller human proportions, and everything was hard angles and metal surfaces, so different from the flowing organic architecture of Velkari ships. They reached a door, and Jake placed his hand on the panel to open it. "These will be our quarters," he said, and Lyra's heart sank. Our quarters. Of course they would share space. They were married now by the laws of both their peoples. The quarters were larger than she expected, divided into several rooms. Jake led her through them, pointing out the main living area, the small kitchen, the bathroom. Then he opened a door to a bedroom with a large sleeping platform, and Lyra felt fear grip her chest. But Jake did not enter that room. Instead, he opened another door across the hall. "This room was meant to be an office, but I've had it converted into another bedroom. I thought you might want your own space, at least for now, until you're comfortable here." Lyra stared at him, certain she had misunderstood. You are giving me my own room?" "Yes, I know this situation isn't what either of us chose. I want you to feel safe here." He met her eyes, and for the first time Lyra saw something other than the cold soldier in his face. There was kindness there, and Lyra spent her first night on the Starbound alone in her new room, and she barely slept. Every sound in the ship made her jump. The hum of the engines, the footsteps in the corridors, the distant voices of the crew. She kept waiting for Jake to change his mind, to come through the door and demand his rights as her husband. But he never came. When morning arrived according to the ship's artificial cycle, Lyra found herself exhausted and confused. She emerged from her room carefully, unsure of what to expect. The living area was empty, but there was a note on the table written in carefully translated Velkari script. "Good morning. I've arranged for breakfast to be delivered to the quarters. I wasn't sure what you would like, so I requested a variety. I'll be on the bridge for most of the day, but Sophie will check on you this afternoon. Take your time settling in." The note was signed simply with Jake's name. Lyra read it 3 times, looking for hidden meanings or threats, but found none. It was just a considerate message from someone who wanted her to feel welcome. She did not know what to do with that. The breakfast arrived shortly after, delivered by a young human crew member who smiled nervously and bowed in a clumsy approximation of Velkari greeting. The food was a problem. Humans and Velkari had different nutritional needs, and most human food made her people sick. The crew member had brought a selection of fruits and simple grains, clearly trying to find something she could eat, but Lyra could only manage a few bites of a bland grain paste before her stomach protested. She spent the morning exploring the quarters, examining everything with cautious curiosity. Jake's military efficiency was evident everywhere. His personal items were neatly organized, his clothes precisely folded, his few decorations placed with deliberate care. She found books on a shelf, real paper books which were rare and precious. Some were about military strategy, but others were poetry and old stories from Earth. She carefully pulled one out and flipped through it, marveling at the strange human letters. When Sophie arrived in the afternoon, she found Lyra sitting on the floor with the book. "Looking lost, finding anything interesting?" Sophie asked gently, settling into a chair nearby. "I cannot read your language," Lyra admitted, "but the pictures are beautiful." Sophie glanced at the book and smiled. "That's a collection of fairy tales from Earth. Old stories we tell children. Jake loves that book. His father used to read it to him." She paused, then added, "He's not what you expected, is he?" Lyra set the book down carefully. "I do not know what to expect. I was told humans were violent, cruel, that they take what they want and show no mercy. In battle, maybe," Sophie said thoughtfully. "But Jake believes there's a difference between being a soldier and being a monster. He fights when he has to, but he doesn't enjoy causing pain." She leaned forward slightly. "I've served with him for 6 years, Princess. I've never seen him abuse his power or treat anyone with cruelty. He's strict, yes, and he has high standards. But he's fair. And he cares about his crew. Why are you telling me this? Because you're part of this crew now. And because I can see you're terrified, and I think that breaks his heart a little, even if he won't say it." Lyra did not know how to respond to that. The idea that Jake Morrison might care about her feelings was so foreign to everything she had been taught that she could not process it. Sophie changed the subject, asking about Velkari culture and customs. They talked for over an hour, and Lyra found herself relaxing slightly. Sophie was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in learning, and she shared stories about life on the Starbound in return. By the time Sophie left, Lyra felt a little less alone. That evening, Jake returned to the quarters. Lyra was sitting in the living area, and she tensed when she heard the door open. He entered looking tired, his uniform jacket already removed and his sleeves rolled up. He stopped when he saw her, as if surprised she was there. "Good evening," he said. "How was your day?" "It was acceptable," Lyra answered carefully. Jake nodded and moved to the kitchen area. "I hope the breakfast was all right. Sophie told me you couldn't eat most of it. I'm sorry about that. I didn't think about the dietary differences." He pulled up something on a data pad, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I've been reading about Velkari nutrition requirements. It's complicated, but I think I can work with the ship's food synthesizers to create something more suitable for you. It might take a few days to get it right." Lyra watched him, bewildered. "You are doing this yourself?" "Well, I'm certainly going to try. I'm not much of a cook, but the synthesizers are pretty forgiving." He glanced up at her, a slight smile on his face. "Unless you'd prefer I have someone else handle it." I don't want to overstep. No, that is very kind of you. He shrugged as if it was nothing. You need to eat. Can't have you getting sick because we don't have the right food. He studied his datapad for a moment longer, then set it aside. I wanted to ask you something. The furniture in here, it's all designed for humans. I noticed you've been sitting on the floor a lot. Is that a cultural preference, or are the chairs uncomfortable for you? Lyra felt her face warm. She had not realized he had been paying such close attention. The chairs are difficult with my wings. I did not want to complain. It's not complaining to point out when something doesn't work for you. Jake stood and examined the chair she usually avoided. The back is too high and too flat. Your wings need more space. He looked thoughtful. I think I can modify one of these. Would you be willing to sit in it so I can take some measurements? For the next 20 minutes, Jake carefully measured the angles and proportions needed to make the chair comfortable for her. He asked her to move her wings through their full range of motion, took notes on his datapad, and explained what modifications he planned to make. His hands never came close to touching her, always respecting her personal space, and his manner was purely professional. I'll work on this tomorrow in the workshop, he said when he was finished. Should have something for you by evening. You do not have to do this, Lyra said quietly. I can manage. Maybe, but you shouldn't have to just manage. This is your home now. It should be comfortable. He met her eyes, his expression serious. I meant what I said yesterday, Princess. I want you to feel safe here. If there's anything else that would make your life easier, please tell me. I can't fix what I don't know about. That night, after Jake had retired to his own room, Lyra sat on the floor of her bedroom and tried to reconcile what she was experiencing with what she had been taught to expect. This human warrior who commanded a powerful warship was spending his free time worrying about her comfort and trying to cook food she could eat. It made no sense. The next few days followed a similar pattern. Jake was gone for most of the day, running the ship and attending to his duties. When he was in the quarters, he was quiet and respectful, always giving her space. He completed the modified chair and presented it to her with obvious pride. When she sat in it and found it perfectly comfortable, her wings able to spread naturally, she saw his face light up with satisfaction. Much better, right? He asked. Yes, thank you. It is perfect. Good. I'll make a few more in different styles so you have options. He also kept his promise about the food. After several days of experimentation and what he called disasters that even the recycler refused to process, he managed to create several Velkari dishes that were actually edible. He insisted she taste test everything and give honest feedback, taking notes seriously even when she had to tell him something was terrible. I think I insulted your people's entire culinary tradition with that one, he said after. She had politely tried a particularly bad attempt at a traditional Velkari breakfast. I'm sorry. I'll do better. You are trying very hard, Lyra said, and she realized with surprise that she was almost smiling. That means something. One evening about 2 weeks after her arrival, Lyra was in the living area when Jake came in looking frustrated. He did not notice her at first, just went to his room and came back out carrying what looked like a complex piece of equipment. He set it on the table and stared at it with annoyance. Problems? Lyra asked hesitantly. Jake looked up, seeming surprised she had spoken to him voluntarily. Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. It's just this communications relay. It's not working properly and I can't figure out why. I've been trying to fix it for 3 days. Lyra stood and moved closer, looking at the device. She had spent years studying Velkari technology, which used similar principles. May I look at it? Of course. She examined the relay carefully, her trained eye spotting the problem quickly. This connector here is not aligned properly, and I think this power regulator is calibrated incorrectly for the signal type you are trying to send. Jake looked at where she was pointing, then grabbed his datapad and ran some calculations. You're right. How did you see that so quickly? I studied engineering in the palace. It was a hobby. She made a few careful adjustments to the device. Try it now. Jake activated the relay and it immediately began functioning correctly. He stared at it in disbelief, then looked at her with something like awe. You just fixed in 2 minutes what I couldn't solve in 3 days. That's incredible. Lyra felt a warm feeling in her chest at the genuine admiration in his voice. It was not difficult. The alarm on the bridge of the Starbound began blaring at 300 hours ship time, pulling Jake from his sleep. He was dressed and out of his quarters in under 2 minutes, leaving a note for Lyra, who was still sleeping. By the time he reached the bridge, Sophie already had the situation on screen. "Distress signal, Commander," she reported crisply. "Velkari civilian transport under attack by raiders. Unknown hostiles. They're outgunned and requesting immediate assistance." Jake studied the tactical display. The transport was nearly 4 hours away at maximum speed, but the Starbound was the closest military vessel. "How many civilians?" "Manifest shows 312, sir. Mostly families. 20 children under the age of 5. Jake did not hesitate. "Set course. Maximum speed. Battle stations." One of the younger officers, Lieutenant Harris, spoke up uncertainly. "Sir, our mission parameters don't include rescue operations for Velkari vessels. We're supposed to be on patrol along the border. Our mission parameters include maintaining the peace," Jake said firmly. "And we're not letting 300 people die because they're on the wrong side of a treaty line. Prepare weapons and shields, move." The crew jumped into action. Within minutes, the Starbound was racing through space toward the distress signal. Jake sent a message to the transport, letting them know help was coming, then began planning the tactical approach. The raiders had 2 small attack ships, nothing the Starbound could not handle. But he wanted to be careful not to endanger the transport in the crossfire. In their quarters, Lyra woke to find Jake's note and the distant sound of the alarm. Her heart raced. Were they under attack? Was this the moment when the peace would shatter and she would see the violent side of humanity that she had been warned about? She dressed quickly and made her way to the bridge, something she had never done before. The guards at the door looked uncertain, but when she insisted, they let her pass. The bridge was a flurry of controlled activity, officers calling out reports and status updates. And there, in the center of it all, stood Jake. He looked different here. Not the considerate man who worried about her comfort, but the military commander who bore the weight of responsibility for his crew and ship. His voice was sharp and precise, his orders clear and immediate. This was the warrior she had been afraid of. Then he saw her, and concern flashed across his face. "Lyra, you should not be here right now. It might not be safe." "What is happening?" she asked, moving closer to him. Sophie answered, pulling up the tactical display. "Velkari transport under attack, Princess. We're moving to assist." Lyra felt her breath catch. "My people?" "Yes," Jake said. "They called for help. We're going to get them out. But why? They are not your responsibility. Your mission—" "My mission is to protect people when I can," Jake interrupted gently. "And right now, those people need help. So we're helping." Lyra watched as the Starbound closed the distance to the transport. She could see the damage on the civilian ship even through the tactical display. The hull breached in several places, life support failing. The raider ships were circling like predators, preparing for another attack run. "Weapons ready, Commander," one of the officers reported. "Target their engines and weapon systems," Jake ordered. "I want them disabled, not destroyed. Give them a chance to surrender." The Starbound emerged from its high-speed approach with precision timing. The first raider never knew what hit it. The Starbound's weapons fire was surgical, taking out the raiders' engines in 3 shots. The ship went dark and began drifting, no longer a threat. The second raider tried to run, but Sophie had already anticipated the move. The Starbound cut off its escape route, and Jake's voice rang out over the communications channel. "Raider vessel, this is Commander Morrison of the human ship Starbound. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded, or we will disable your ship. You have 10 seconds to comply." There was a tense moment of silence. Then the raider powered down. "Harris, take a security team and board that vessel," Jake ordered. "Sophie, get our engineers over to the transport. I want damage assessments and emergency repairs started immediately. Medical team, prepare to receive casualties." The next 2 hours were organized chaos. Lyra watched from the bridge as Jake coordinated the rescue operation with the same efficiency he applied to everything else. The transport's hull was patched, life support restored, injured passengers triaged and treated. The Starbound's cargo bay was opened to provide temporary shelter for those whose quarters on the transport were too damaged to occupy. Lyra found herself wanting to help, and Sophie put her to work translating and helping coordinate with the Velkari passengers, many of whom were frightened and confused. One elderly Velkari woman named Sarah clutched Lyra's hand as medics treated her minor injuries. "Bless you, child," Sarah said weakly. "Bless you and these humans. They saved us. I thought we would die out here." The commander did not hesitate, Lyra told her. As soon as he heard you were in danger, he came. The commander? Sarah's eyes focused on Lyra more clearly, taking in her formal robes and the markers of royalty in her feathers. Princess? Princess Lyra? Is that truly you? Yes, Lyra said softly. But what are you doing on a human ship? The report said you were married to one of them, but I thought it was just propaganda from the war. It is true. Commander Morrison is my husband. Sarah's expression became worried. Child, you must be careful. Humans are dangerous. I know they saved us, but do not let one act of mercy blind you to what they are capable of. They are playing a long game, using you for their purposes. Do not trust them too easily. The words stung because they echoed the warnings Lyra had heard all her life. But as she looked around the cargo bay at the human crew members carefully tending to Velkari civilians, speaking in soft voices to frightened children, sharing their own rations with hungry passengers, she found it hard to see the monsters she had been taught to fear. When the immediate crisis was over, Lyra returned to the bridge. Jake was still there, going over reports with Sophie. He looked exhausted, but his face brightened when he saw her. You were a big help with the translations, he said. Thank you for stepping in. I wanted to help. They are my people. They're people in need. That's all that matters. He turned back to his reports, but Lyra remained standing there, something building inside her that she needed to release. Jake, she said, using his name for only the second time since she had known him. He looked up, surprised. Why did you do this? You could have ignored the signal. You could have said it was not your problem. Your own officer questioned your decision. Jake was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. When I was a kid, maybe 8 years old, my mother told me something I've never forgotten. She said that the measure of a person isn't how they treat those who can help them or hurt them. It's how they treat those who can do neither. Those people on that transport can't help me and can't hurt me, but they needed help and I had the power to give it. So I did. It is that simple for you. It should be that simple for everyone. He smiled tiredly. Besides, peace isn't just about signing treaties and arranging marriages. It's about building trust through actions. Maybe some of those people will go home and tell their families that humans came to their rescue. Maybe that changes a few minds about who we are. That's worth the deviation from our patrol route. Lyra felt something shift in her chest, something warm and unfamiliar. She had been watching Jake for weeks now, cataloging his kindnesses, his considerations, his respect. But this was different. This was seeing him choose to help her people when he gained nothing from it except the satisfaction of doing what was right. Your mother sounds like a wise woman, Lyra said softly. She was. She died when I was 15, but I still try to live the way she taught me. Jake's expression became thoughtful. She wasn't human, actually. She was from a species called the Terrae. They're aquatic, live mostly in the ocean colonies of Europa. My father met her during a diplomatic mission. Everyone told him it would never work, that the differences were too great. But they loved each other, and they made it work. That is why you treat me the way you do, Lyra said, understanding clicking into place. You saw your parents navigate an intercultural marriage. I saw my father treat my mother with love and respect every single day of their marriage, even when it was hard. Even when other people judged them. He never once made her feel less than his equal. Jake met her eyes steadily. That's the example I'm trying to follow. I know our situation is different. I know you didn't choose this, but I'm still going to treat you with the respect you deserve. Lyra did not know what to say to that. Her throat felt tight with emotions she could not name. Back in her homeworld, marriage was about property and power, about families making alliances. The idea that a partnership could be about mutual respect and support was so foreign to her that she barely knew how to process it. That evening, after the transport had been escorted to the nearest safe port and the crisis was over, Lyra sat with Jake in their shared quarters. They were both tired, but there was a new ease between them. Lyra found herself talking more freely, telling him about her childhood, her studies, her love of the old poems. Would you recite one for me? Jake asked. I'd like to hear what Velkari poetry sounds like. The message from Kira arrived encrypted and marked urgent. Lyra was in the quarters alone when her personal comm device chimed with the priority signal. She activated it immediately and her sister's face appeared on the screen. Kira looked frightened, her feathers ruffled and her eyes wide. Lyra, thank the stars you answered, Kira said quickly, her voice shaking. I do not have much time. They are watching our family now. I had to sneak away to send this. Kira, what is wrong? What has happened? There is a faction, a group of hardliners in the Empire who oppose the peace treaty. They are growing stronger, Lyra. They call you a traitor for marrying a human. They say you have betrayed our people and that Father dishonored our house by allowing it. Kira glanced over her shoulder nervously. They are making speeches in the council, turning people against our family. And there are whispers, sister. Whispers that they plan to send assassins to bring you back, to make an example of you. Lyra felt ice form in her chest. Assassins? I do not know if it is true, but the threats are real. You need to be careful. These people are dangerous. They want the war to continue, and they see your marriage as the symbol of everything they hate. Kira's eyes filled with tears. I am scared for you. I am scared for all of us. Has anyone threatened you directly? Not yet. But Father is losing support in the council. They blame him for the treaty for sending you away. Some are calling for our house to be stripped of its titles. Kira wiped her eyes. I have to go. Someone might notice I am gone. Please, sister, be safe. And tell your human to protect you. If even half the stories about human warriors are true, maybe he can keep you alive. The connection ended abruptly. Lyra sat staring at the blank screen, her mind racing. She had known that not everyone supported the peace, but she had not realized how organized the opposition had become. And the idea of assassins coming for her made her stomach turn with fear. She was still sitting there when Jake returned from the bridge an hour later. He took one look at her face and immediately crossed the room to kneel beside her chair. Lyra? What happened? You look terrified. She told him everything, her voice shaking as she relayed Kira's warning. Jake listened intently, his expression growing more serious with every word. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, thinking. We need to inform the security team immediately, he said finally, and I'll need to contact command about this. If there's an active threat against you, we need to take precautions. What kind of precautions? Increased security protocols. Restricted access to certain areas of the ship. Background checks on any new personnel. And you'll need protection when you leave the quarters. He saw her expression and added gently, I know it sounds extreme, but if these people are serious, we can't take chances with your safety. Perhaps it would be easier if I just left, Lyra said quietly. If I went to neutral territory, sought asylum somewhere, then you would not be burdened with protecting me, and the political situation might improve for my family. Jake's response was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. You're not going anywhere unless you want to, and you're not a burden. He reached out as if to take her hand, then stopped, remembering that she might not welcome the touch. Lyra, listen to me. Those people don't get to threaten you and force you into hiding. That's not how this works. But the treaty is important, but your life is more important. If maintaining peace means sending you somewhere you'll be in danger, then the peace isn't worth having. He stood and began pacing, clearly working through the problem. Besides, if you disappear or seek asylum, they'll claim it as a victory. They'll say they drove you away, that humans couldn't protect you. That weakens the treaty more than anything. Lyra watched him pace, saw the determination in his face, and felt that warm feeling in her chest grow stronger. He was not angry at her for bringing danger to his ship. He was not calculating how to minimize his losses. He was simply focused on keeping her safe because that was what mattered to him. What should I do? She asked. First, you stay calm. Panic helps no one. Second, you let me and my crew do our jobs. We're very good at protecting people. He stopped pacing and looked at her directly. And third, if you're comfortable with it, we show them that their threats don't work. We make a public statement together, affirming the treaty and denouncing the violence. Let them see that we're united, that their intimidation tactics have failed. You want me to speak publicly? To challenge them? Only if you want to. I won't force you into anything, but I think showing strength right now is better than showing fear. He smiled slightly. And I'll be right there with you. They'll have to go through me to get to you, and I promise you that's not going to happen. Lyra considered his words. Everything in her instincts told her to hide, to make herself small and hope the danger passed. But she thought about her sister, about her father losing power because of her. She thought about the peace that so many people had died for. And she thought about Jake, who had shown her nothing but kindness and respect, who was willing to risk political complications and possibly even violence to keep her safe. I will do it, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I will make the statement. But Jake, I am afraid. That's okay. Being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you do the right thing even when you are afraid. He moved closer to her chair. I know you've only known me for a few weeks. I know you're probably still not sure if you can trust me completely. But I need you to trust me about this. I will keep you safe. That's a promise. Lyra looked up at him, at this human who had somehow become the safest person in her universe, and she made a decision. She stood up, her wings spreading slightly in a gesture of trust, and she placed her hand in his. It was the first time she had voluntarily touched him. I trust you, she said simply. She felt Jake's hand close gently around hers, warm and solid. His eyes widened slightly as if he understood the significance of the gesture. Thank you, he said quietly. I won't let you down. The next 2 days were a flurry of preparation. Jake increased security across the ship, briefed his senior officers about the threat, and worked with Sophie to draft a statement that would be strong without being inflammatory. Lyra practiced what she would say, translating the concepts into her own language so she could speak from the heart, rather than reading prepared words. On the 3rd day, they recorded the message together. Lyra wore her formal robes, the ones that marked her as a princess of the Velkari Empire. Jake stood beside her in his dress uniform, every inch the military commander. They stood close enough that their shoulders almost touched, presenting a united front. Lyra spoke first, her voice clear and steady despite her nerves. She addressed her people directly, explaining that she had entered this marriage to create peace, but that she remained in it by choice. She spoke about the respect and kindness she had found among humans, about the rescue of the Velkari transport, about the possibility of true cooperation between their species. Then she looked directly into the camera and addressed the hardliners. To those who threaten violence in the name of our people, I say this. You do not speak for the Velkari. You speak only for your own fear and hatred. I will not hide from you. I will not let your threats silence me. And I will not abandon the peace that so many sacrificed to achieve. If you come for me, you will find not a frightened girl, but a woman who stands with allies who will defend what is right. Jake spoke next, his voice carrying the authority of his rank. He affirmed humanity's commitment to the treaty, praised Lyra's courage, and made it clear that any attack on her would be considered an attack on the Starbound itself. He spoke about the importance of peace and the futility of continuing the cycle of violence. And he ended with a simple statement that made Lyra's hearts beat faster. Princess Lyra is under the protection of the Starbound and her crew. She is one of us now, and we take care of our own. The message was broadcast across both human and Velkari space. The response was immediate and overwhelming. News channels analyzed every word. Diplomats argued about its implications. Common citizens on both sides offered messages of support or condemnation. Within hours, the recording had been viewed millions of times. Lyra and Jake watched some of the responses together in their quarters. Many of the comments from Velkari viewers surprised her with their support. People praised her courage, said she was a true daughter of the Empire, thanked her for standing firm. Others were less kind, repeating the rhetoric of the hardliners, but there were fewer of those than she had feared. Look at this one, Jake said, pointing to a comment thread. This Velkari mother is thanking you for giving her hope that her children might grow up in a peaceful galaxy. And here, this human veteran says your message made him believe the war was worth fighting to end. There are many who still hate me, Lyra pointed out. Reading some of the negative comments. There will always be people who cling to hate, but there are more who are willing to try for something better. He looked at her with an expression she was starting to recognize, something warm and proud. You were incredibly brave today. I was terrified the entire time. I know. That's what made it brave. He hesitated, then added, for what it's worth, I meant what I said. You're one of us now. The crew has... The alarm continued to blare through the ship, each pulse making Lyra flinch. She had been alone in the locked quarters for 20 minutes, and every second felt like an eternity. She kept her back pressed against the wall, her wings tucked tight, listening for any sound in the corridor outside. Then she heard it. Footsteps, fast and purposeful. They stopped outside the door, and Lyra's heart hammered against her chest. A hand touched the door panel, and she heard the electronic rejection of someone without proper access trying to get in. Override security, a harsh voice said in Velkari. The target is inside. There were 2 of them at least, possibly more. Lyra looked around frantically for anything she could use as a weapon. The quarters were comfortable but sparse. She grabbed a heavy sculpture from Jake's shelf, something made of metal that could at least slow someone down if she swung it hard enough. The door began to spark as someone applied a cutting tool to the lock mechanism. Lyra backed further into the room, her mind racing. She could try to hide, but where? She could try to fight, but she had never been trained in combat. She could try to call for help, but her comm device was across the room and they would be through the door before she could reach it. The door started to slide open, the lock mechanism failing under the assault. A figure in dark combat armor stepped through, holding a weapon. Behind the helmet visor, Lyra could see Velkari eyes. One of her own people sent to kill her or capture her. Princess Lyra, the figure said coldly. You are coming with us. Do not resist and you will not be harmed. I am not going anywhere with you, Lyra said, surprised at the steadiness in her own voice. That was not a request. The assassin raised the weapon and Lyra braced herself. But before the shot could be fired, something crashed through the partially open door with tremendous force, slamming into the assassin and sending both figures tumbling to the floor. It was Jake. He moved with a speed and precision that Lyra had never seen before. His hands were empty of weapons, but he did not need them. He had the assassin disarmed in seconds, the weapon skittering across the floor. The two figures grappled, and Lyra saw the sheer difference in their fighting styles. The Velkari assassin was trained and skilled, using techniques designed to work with wings and lighter bone structure. But Jake fought with the brutal efficiency of a human, his heavier build and denser muscle giving him an advantage in close combat. A second assassin appeared in the doorway, raising a weapon toward Jake's back. Lyra did not think. She just acted. She launched herself forward, swinging the metal sculpture with all her strength. It connected with the assassin's arm and the shot went wide, burning a hole in the ceiling instead of in Jake's back. Lyra, down, Jake shouted. She dropped immediately and Jake swept the second assassin's legs out from under them. Within moments, both attackers were subdued, their hands secured behind their backs with restraints Jake had pulled from his belt. Security officers flooded into the room seconds later, taking custody of the assassins. Are there more? Jake demanded, breathing hard. 2 more attempted to breach the ship, Sophie reported, appearing in the doorway. Harris and his team have them contained in Section 7. The ship is secure, Commander. Jake nodded, then immediately turned to Lyra. Are you hurt? Did they touch you? I am fine, Lyra said, but her hands were shaking so badly that she could barely hold the sculpture she had used as a weapon. You came back. You promised you would come back, and you did. I will always come back for you, Jake said, and there was something fierce in his voice, something that made Lyra's heart skip. He looked down at the assassins being led away. Get them to the brig. I want to know everything. Who sent them? How they got on my ship? What their orders were, everything. After the security team left with the prisoners, Jake ran his hands through his hair, clearly coming down from the adrenaline. I'm sorry, he said to Lyra. I'm so sorry. They shouldn't have gotten anywhere near you. There was a mole in the crew, someone who gave them access codes. We're still tracking down who. You saved my life, Lyra said softly. Both of you. She looked at Sophie. Thank you. Just doing my job, Princess, Sophie said, but she looked shaken. Though I have to say that was one hell of a swing you took at that second assassin. Quick thinking. Lyra looked down at the sculpture still in her hands, surprised at herself. I did not think. I just saw him aiming at Jake and I moved. Jake's expression softened. You protected me. You have protected me since the day we met. It was my turn. After Sophie left to coordinate the security sweep of the ship, Jake and Lyra were finally alone. The quarters suddenly felt very quiet after all the chaos. Jake moved to the kitchen area, pulling out supplies to make tea with shaking hands. Lyra noticed the blood on his uniform. You are injured, she said, moving closer. It's nothing, just a scratch from when I went through that door. Probably should have waited for it to open all the way first. He smiled, trying to make light of it, but Lyra could see the cut on his shoulder where his uniform was torn. Sit down, she said firmly. Let me see it. Lyra, really, I'm fine. Sit down. Jake sat, looking surprised at her authoritative tone. Lyra retrieved the medical kit from the bathroom, something she had noticed weeks ago but never needed to use. She carefully cut away the damaged portion of his uniform, revealing the cut beneath. It was not deep, but it was bleeding steadily. This will sting, she warned, applying an antiseptic gel. Jake winced but did not pull away. You're good at this. I studied basic medical care in the palace. It was considered an appropriate skill for a lady. She worked carefully, cleaning the wound and applying a sealing patch, though I never thought I would be using it to treat a human warrior who just fought assassins in my defense. Technically, you also fought those assassins. That was a pretty impressive hit you landed. I was terrified. So was I, Jake admitted. When I heard they had breached the quarters, when I thought they might hurt you. He stopped, his jaw tightening. I've been in a lot of combat situations. I've faced enemy fire and impossible odds, but I have never been as scared as I was in the moment before I got to this room. Lyra's hand stilled on his shoulder. Jake, I care about you, Lyra, more than I should, probably. More than is wise for this situation. He looked up at her, his eyes intense. But I can't help it. Somewhere between trying to cook Velkari food and watching you fix my communications relay and hearing you recite poetry in your beautiful language, I fell for you. Completely. Lyra felt tears sting her eyes. I was so afraid you would be cruel. I spent the journey here imagining all the terrible things you might do. But you have been nothing but kind. Nothing but gentle and respectful and... She paused, searching for the right words in his language. You make me feel safe. You make me feel valued. You make me feel like I matter, not because I am a princess or a symbol of peace, but just because I am me. You do matter. To me, you matter more than anything. She finished treating his wound, but her hands lingered on his shoulder. This close, she could feel the warmth of his body, could see the slight tremor in his hands that betrayed how affected he had been by the attack. This human who fought so fiercely to protect her was also vulnerable, also capable of fear and worry. When I saw that assassin aiming at you, Lyra said quietly, I realized something. I realized that losing you would break me, that you have become the most important person in my world. She moved around to face him directly. I love you, Jake Morrison. I do not know when it happened. Perhaps it was gradual, a little bit every day as you showed me kindness. Or perhaps it was all at once when you risked your mission to save my people. But it is true. I love you. Jake stood slowly, carefully, as if afraid she might startle and fly away. Lyra, I need you to be sure. This isn't gratitude talking, or relief that we survived. This is me talking. Just me, telling you what my hearts have known for days, but I was too afraid to admit. She spread her wings slightly, a Velkari gesture of openness and honesty. I love you, and I am choosing you, not because I was forced to marry you, but because you are the person I want to be with. Jake reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and gently cupped her face with one hand. I love you too. I have loved you for weeks. I just didn't want to say it and make you feel pressured. Kiss me, Lyra whispered. Please. I want to know what it feels like when it is my choice. Jake leaned in slowly, carefully, and pressed his lips to hers. It was gentle and sweet and nothing like Lyra had imagined. There was no demand in it, no possession, just affection and care and promise. When they parted, Lyra was smiling, her feathers ruffled in a way that indicated happiness. That was nice, she said. Just nice, Jake teased gently. Very nice. Perhaps we should try it again, just to be certain. He laughed and obliged, and this time the kiss was deeper, more confident. Lyra felt warmth spread through her entire body, felt the last of her fears and doubts melt away. When they finally pulled apart, Jake rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight? He asked softly. Not in separate rooms, just stay with me. I need to know you're close. I need to know you're safe. Yes, Lyra said simply. That night they lay together in Jake's bed, Lyra's wings draped. 3 months after the attack on the Starbound, an official invitation arrived from the human government. They wanted Jake and Lyra to come to Earth for a state visit, to formally present them as symbols of the peace treaty, and to strengthen diplomatic relations. The invitation was beautifully written, full of formal language about honor and cooperation, but Lyra could read between the lines. The government wanted to use their story to convince skeptical citizens that the peace was real and lasting. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, Jake told her as they read the invitation together in their quarters. I know Earth might be overwhelming. The gravity is heavier than you're used to, and there will be a lot of public attention. Lyra considered it carefully. Earth was the human homeworld, a place of legend and mystery to her people. The Velkari had never set foot on Earth's surface during the war. It had always been too well defended, too dangerous to approach. The idea of walking on that alien world made her nervous. but she also understood the importance of what was being asked of them. "We should go," she said finally. "Our relationship has become a symbol whether we wanted it to or not. If appearing on Earth and showing people that we are genuinely happy together helps maintain the peace, then we have a duty to do it." Jake smiled and took her hand. "When did you become so wise and diplomatic?" "I have been learning from the best," she said, squeezing his fingers. "Besides, I want to see your homeworld. I want to understand where you come from. Then we'll go. But I'm warning you now, my father is going to embarrass me with stories from my childhood. It's inevitable." "Good. I want to hear all of them." The journey to Earth took 2 weeks through the established jump routes. During that time, Jake prepared Lyra for what to expect. He explained about Earth's stronger gravity and helped her practice moving with the weight dampeners that would make it more manageable. He showed her videos of human cities, the crowded streets and towering buildings that were so different from the elegant spires of Velkari architecture. He taught her about human social customs, the small gestures and phrases that would help her navigate interactions with Earth's leaders and citizens. "Remember, eye contact is important to humans," he explained one evening. "It shows honesty and confidence, and handshakes are how we greet each other formally. You don't have to squeeze hard, just firm enough to show you're engaged." Lyra practiced with him, getting used to the strange human customs. Her people greeted each other with wing displays and musical tones, not physical contact with strangers. But she was determined to do this right, to honor Jake's culture the way he had always honored hers. When they finally arrived at Earth, Lyra stood at the observation window and stared down at the blue and green world below. It was beautiful in a wild, chaotic way. So much water, so many swirling clouds, so different from the ordered crystal cities of her homeworld. "That's home," Jake said softly, standing beside her. "Or it was, before the Starbound became home." "It is beautiful," Lyra said honestly. "Fierce and beautiful like your people." They landed at a military spaceport outside of a major city. The moment the ship's ramp lowered, Lyra felt the difference in gravity. Even with the dampeners, everything felt heavier. Her wings dragged slightly, and each step took more effort. Jake stayed close, ready to help if she needed it, but she was determined to walk off that ramp with dignity. A crowd was waiting. Government officials, military brass, and media representatives with their cameras and recording devices. Lyra took a deep breath and walked down the ramp beside Jake, her head held high and her wings spread in a formal display of confidence. The human officials greeted them warmly. Admiral Helen Cruz, the commander of Earth's Defense Forces, shook both their hands and welcomed them officially. "Commander Morrison, Princess Lyra, welcome to Earth. We're honored to have you here." "The honor is ours, Admiral," Jake replied formally. They were escorted to a vehicle that would take them to the government complex. Lyra tried not to stare as they drove through the city, but it was impossible not to be amazed. Humans were everywhere, moving in great rushing crowds through streets packed with vehicles and shops and restaurants. The noise was incredible, and the smell of so many different things cooking and growing and living all mixed together. "Are all human cities like this?" she asked Jake quietly. "Most of them. Humans like to live close together. We're social creatures, for better or worse. It is so different from home, but there is an energy to it, a vitality." Over the next few days, they were paraded through a series of official events. They attended formal dinners with government leaders, gave speeches at universities, toured historical sites, and participated in ceremonies celebrating the peace treaty. Lyra handled it all with grace, though the constant attention was exhausting. She was grateful that Jake never left her side, always there to support her if she stumbled over an unfamiliar custom or needed a moment to rest. The human officials were polite and respectful, clearly briefed on Velkari customs. But Lyra could sense their curiosity, the way they watched her and Jake together, looking for signs that their relationship was genuine rather than just political theater. She made sure to give them what they needed to see. She held Jake's hand, in public, smiled at him warmly, spoke about their life together with obvious affection. It was not difficult because all of it was true. On the 4th day, they visited Jake's hometown, a smaller city near a large body of water called the Pacific Ocean. Jake's father, Peter, met them at his home, a modest house with a garden full of colorful earth plants. Peter was older than Lyra expected, with gray hair and kind eyes that looked exactly like Jake's. "So you're the princess who's made my son so happy," Peter said, taking Lyra's hand gently. "It's wonderful to finally meet you in person. Jake talks about you constantly in his messages." "He does?" Lyra asked, surprised and pleased. "Oh yes. Can't get him to shut up about how smart you are, how beautiful your poetry sounds, how you saved his life during that attack." Peter smiled warmly. "He's in love with you. That much is very clear." Jake looked embarrassed. "Dad? What?" "It's true." Peter led them into the house, which was filled with pictures and mementos from Jake's childhood. Come in, I made lunch." "Don't worry, Princess. I researched Velkari dietary needs. I think I've put together something you can actually eat." The meal was simple but delicious, and Lyra found herself relaxing in Peter's presence. He told stories about Jake as a child, about the trouble he got into and the fierce sense of justice he showed even then. He talked about his late wife, Jake's mother, and the life they had built together despite the challenges of an intercultural marriage. "It wasn't always easy," Peter admitted. "There were people who thought we shouldn't be together. Her own family rejected her for marrying a human, and some humans couldn't accept that I loved someone who wasn't one of us. But we didn't let that stop us. We built a life based on respect and love, and we never regretted it." "Jake told me about his mother," Lyra said softly. "He tries to honor her memory by treating me the way you treated her." Peter's eyes grew misty. "He's a good man, better than I ever was, and I can see that you're good for each other. That's all that matters." After lunch, Peter showed Lyra his garden. He had been trying to grow some plants native to his wife's homeworld, aquatic species that required special tanks and careful maintenance. "I started this after she died," he explained. "It makes me feel close to her keeping these alive, remembering where she came from." "That is beautiful," Lyra said, touched by the gesture. "Love doesn't end just because someone is gone," Peter said quietly. "And it doesn't matter if they're from a different world or a different species. What matters is how you treat each other, how you support each other, how you build a life together." He looked at her seriously. "Jake told me about the assassination attempt, about how you protected him even though you were terrified. That's love, Princess, real love. Hold on to that." The visit with Peter was the highlight of the trip for Lyra. But the next day brought a harsh reminder that not everyone on Earth supported the peace or their marriage. They were scheduled to attend a public ceremony in the capital city, a symbolic event where they would plant a tree representing the hope for lasting peace between their peoples. The plaza was packed with thousands of people, most of them supportive and cheering. But as the ceremony began, Lyra noticed a group near the back holding signs with angry slogans. "Humans for humanity," one read. "No alien influence," said another. The protesters were shouting, though their words were drowned out by the larger crowd. Jake noticed them too and positioned himself slightly in front of Lyra, protective instincts taking over. "Security has them contained," he murmured to her. "Just ignore them and focus on the ceremony." Lyra nodded and tried to do as he said. She spoke her prepared words about peace and cooperation, her voice amplified across the plaza. Jake spoke next, his words strong and clear. Then they knelt together to plant the young tree, a hybrid species that could grow in both Earth and Velkari soil conditions, symbolic of their two peoples finding common ground. As they stood back up, the security situation changed. The protesters broke through the barriers, rushing toward the stage. Most were human. 6 months had passed since the assassination attempt on Earth, and the galaxy had changed in ways that Lyra could never have imagined when she first stepped aboard the Starbound. She stood now on the observation deck, watching the stars slip by as the ship traveled through space, and she marveled at how different her life had become. The cultural exchange program she had proposed to Jake months ago had grown beyond her wildest expectations. Dozens of ships now carried mixed crews of humans and Velkari working together. Universities on both worlds offered exchange programs where students could study alien cultures and languages. Trade agreements were being signed. Scientific collaborations were producing breakthroughs that neither species could have achieved alone. The peace that had seemed so fragile a year ago was becoming something solid and real. And at the center of it all, whether they wanted to be or not, were Lyra and Jake. Their story had become the symbol that both governments pointed to when skeptics questioned whether two such different species could truly coexist. The images from the assassination attempt, of Lyra shielding Jake with her wings and refusing to leave his side, had become iconic. People on both worlds saw in them proof that love could bridge any divide. "You're thinking too hard again," Jake said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "I can practically hear your brain working from the bridge." Lyra leaned back against him, her wings folding comfortably around them both. "I was thinking about how far we have come, how different everything is from what I expected. Better different or worse different? Much better. So much better that sometimes I'm afraid I will wake up and find it was all a dream." She turned in his arms to face him. "Did I tell you that Kira sent another message today? Good news, I hope?" "Very good news. The hardline faction has lost almost all its support. Father has been restored to full power in the council, and the moderates are now in control. They want to expand the peace treaty, add more cooperation agreements." Lyra smiled. "And Kira is engaged to a human diplomat she met at one of the cultural exchange events. She says I inspired her." Jake laughed. "Your little sister is braver than both of us. At least we had political pressure as an excuse for getting together. She's doing it purely by choice. Love is always a choice," Lyra said softly. "I was forced to marry you, but I chose to love you. And that choice has made all the difference." They were interrupted by Sophie's voice over the comm system. "Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from Velkar Prime. It's addressed to both you and Princess Lyra." Jake and Lyra exchanged glances. "Put it through to my ready room," Jake said. They made their way to the small office adjacent to the bridge, and Jake activated the communication screen. The face that appeared was one Lyra had not expected to see. It was her father. "King Varan of the Velkari Empire, Father," Lyra said, bowing slightly out of habit. "Lyra. Commander Morrison." Her father looked older than she remembered, the stress of the political turmoil evident in his features. "I hope this message finds you both well." "We're fine, Your Majesty," Jake said formally. "Good, I am contacting you with an official invitation. One that comes not just from the royal family, but from the entire council. We would like you both to return to Velkar Prime as honored guests. It is time that we formally welcome Commander Morrison to our world and acknowledge the role you both have played in securing our peace." Lyra felt her breath catch. "You want us to come home?" "Yes, and I want to apologize, daughter. To you and to your husband." Varen's voice was heavy with emotion. "I sent you away believing I was doing what was necessary for our people. But I did not stop to consider what I was asking of you. I gave you to strangers and expected you to sacrifice your happiness for politics. I am deeply sorry for that, and I am grateful that you found happiness despite my lack of consideration. Father, Lyra did not know what to say. She had imagined this conversation so many times, had rehearsed angry speeches and tearful accusations. But now that the moment was here, all she felt was a weary relief. "Thank you. That means more to me than you know. Will you come? Both of you?" Jake looked at Lyra, leaving the decision to her. She thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, Father. We will come." It is time I went home, and past time that Jake saw the world that shaped me. After the transmission ended, Lyra sat quietly, processing what had just happened. Jake waited patiently, understanding that she needed time to work through her emotions. "Are you okay?" he asked finally. "I think so. It is strange. I spent so long angry at him for sending me away, but now all I can think about is how much I have gained from it. If he had not made that decision, I never would have met you. I never would have discovered that I could be brave or strong or capable of protecting myself. I never would have learned that love could be a partnership between equals." "Every cloud has a silver lining," Jake said. "Even the clouds that start out looking like thunderstorms." The journey to Velkar Prime took 2 weeks. During that time, Jake studied everything he could about Velkari culture and customs. He wanted to make a good impression, to show Lyra's people that not all humans were the warriors they had fought in the war. Lyra helped him practice the traditional greetings, the proper way to show respect to elders, the significance of different wing positions and musical tones. "You are going to do wonderfully," she assured him one evening as he practiced bowing in the formal Velkari style for the 10th time. "My people will love you. Or they'll think I'm a clumsy alien making a mockery of their traditions. Then they will be wrong. You are a clumsy alien showing genuine respect for their traditions, and that is what matters." She smiled and straightened his collar. "Besides, I will be there beside you. Together, remember?" "Together," he agreed, pulling her close. "I like the sound of that more every day." When they finally emerged from the jump point near Velkar Prime, Lyra pressed close to the observation window, eager for her first glimpse of her homeworld in over a year. The planet appeared before them, its surface covered in crystal spires that caught the light of the twin suns and threw rainbows across the clouds. It was achingly beautiful, and Lyra felt tears sting her eyes. "That's home," she whispered. "My first home before you became my home." Jake stood beside her, awed by the sight. "It's incredible." The pictures didn't do it justice. They landed at the royal spaceport to great ceremony. Thousands of Velkari had gathered to welcome them, and as Lyra and Jake walked down the ramp together, the crowd erupted in a complex harmony of musical tones that served as applause in Velkari culture. Lyra sang back the traditional acknowledgement, her voice clear and strong, and the crowd responded with even greater enthusiasm. Her father waited at the base of the ramp, flanked by the council members. Lyra approached him and performed the formal greeting, and then, to her surprise, he pulled her into an embrace that was decidedly informal. "Welcome home, daughter," he said softly. "I have missed you." "I have missed you too, father." Varen released her and turned to Jake, sizing him up with an appraising eye. Jake stood straight and performed the formal greeting he had practiced, his pronunciation of the musical tones not perfect, but clearly sincere in effort. Varen's eyes widened slightly, then he smiled. "Commander Morrison, you honor us by attempting our language. Welcome to Velkar Prime. Thank you for caring for my daughter." "It has been my privilege, Your Majesty," Jake replied in human speech, which Varen's translation device rendered into Velkari. "She has enriched my life in ways I cannot fully express." The formal welcome ceremony lasted for hours, but finally Lyra and Jake were allowed to retreat to the quarters that had been prepared for them in the palace. Lyra walked through the familiar corridors with mixed emotions, seeing all the places she had known as a child through new eyes. "This is my room," she said, opening a door to show Jake her old chambers. "Or it was. I spent most of my life in here, studying and reading and dreaming about what the wider universe might be like." Jake looked around at the delicate furnishings, the shelves full of books and art supplies, the windows that looked out over the crystal gardens. "It's beautiful. Very you. It feels small now, like a cage I did not realize I was in until you opened the door." She took his hand. "I am glad I left. I am glad I found you. Even if the circumstances were difficult, I would not change how things turned out." Over the next several days, Lyra showed Jake everything about her world. They walked through the crystal gardens where she had played as a child. They visited the great library where she had studied ancient texts. They attended performances of traditional Velkari music and dance, and Jake watched with wonder as performers moved through intricate patterns with their wings, creating visual harmonies as beautiful as the songs they sang. And everywhere they went, Velkari citizens approached them with kindness and curiosity. Young people especially wanted to meet Jake, to ask questions about human culture, to thank him for protecting their princess. Lyra watched with pride as Jake patiently answered every question, shared stories about Earth and humanity, and slowly changed minds about what humans were really like. On the 5th day, they attended a formal banquet in the Grand Hall. Hundreds of Velkari nobles and dignitaries filled the vast space, and Lyra,